is a strange thing. It doesn't work like I thought it did. We are so bound by time, by its order.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Real Ripe and Real Rotten. This is a podcast that takes a look at the highs and lows of your favorite Hollywood artists. Each month we're going to be using Rotten Tomatoes to determine the best and worst film in one individual's filmography. You can listen along and try to figure out what went right and what went wrong. My name is Wes Teasdale. I'm joined by Clay McCormick. Clay, how are you? Welcome to our discussion of Arrival.
I'm good. I think they should have called this movie Art House Independence Day.
Oh yeah, it's. Do you think it's Or you could have called it DS9 Pilot, the theatrical version, I guess, would be a way you could look at it.
DS9 Pilot where I don't roll my eyes for 2 hours.
We're talking about the best film in Amy Adams's current filmography as of early 2019. And Arrival, it's her number one. It's at 94% on the tomatometer.
Although, that being said, I think this movie could have even been better if they had a scene where Amy Adams chewed out Captain Picard. Yeah,
if she meets with her predecessor from the earlier movie and has a head-to-head, a tete-a-tete. The critical consensus of this one, it's at 94% with 396 reviews. Arrival delivers a must-see experience for fans of thinking person sci-fi that anchors its heady themes with genuinely affecting emotion and a terrific performance from Amy Adams. So we're right off of Leap Year, and now we're going to be talking about the sci-fi version and the highest-rated film in Amy Adams's filmography at this point. It's a 2016 American sci-fi film called Arrival, directed by Denis Villeneuve and written by Eric Hesserer, based on
which we should say, we were saying before Villanueva, which is not correct.
No, it's very close. It's only if you switch the U and the E, it becomes Villanueva.
It is, but it's also like if you were to pronounce my name Macor Mastrantonio. So apologies.
Denny is not a very Spanish name. It is much more French, so I should have known that. It's based on a 1998 short story, Story of Your Life. It stars Amy Adams, Jeremy Renner, and Forrest Whitaker. Amy Adams is a linguist enlisted by the U.S. Army to discover how to communicate with aliens who have arrived on Earth before tensions lead to war. It was nominated for 8 Academy Awards at the 89th Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Adapted Screenplay. Clay, do you know what it won for? Not out of those. Not out of those. Oh. It's its own category. It didn't win any of those categories.
Sound editing.
It is. Yep, sound editing.
Really?
Yeah. Oh. Which I think makes sense. I noticed the sound quite a bit during this movie. I thought it was very good, but that's about it. Let's see. Let's get into it. So, what'd you think of Arrival, Clay?
Loved it. I start to finish, I thought it was great.
Yeah. I thought it was pretty brilliant, and the more I think about it, I think the better I hold it in its regards. However, I will say, the focus of this podcast is the high and lows of a person's career. This is a weird movie in that I think anybody could have played any of the roles, and it probably would have been okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not really a character thing. So it's funny that it's Amy Adams's highest role, and it's funny that we didn't get a good example of a movie where she gets to show off some serious acting chops, because we saw Leap Year, which was terrible, and then we saw this one, which is not really an actor's kind of movie.
Well, to be fair, I mean, anybody could have played any of the parts in Leap Year and it would have still been terrible.
That's
so I
true.
think it's and also Arrival is not really that dissimilar to Leap Year when you think about it. I mean, she goes in looking for one thing and ends up coming out with a husband in a very unexpected manner.
It's a little bit more insightful. Let's take a break and play the trailer for people if they're unfamiliar or they want to remind themselves. We'll be back and we're going to break it down.
There are days that define your story beyond your life. Like the day they arrived.
No signs of what might be called first contact. The objects measure at least 50.
I'm Colonel G.T. Weber from Army Intelligence. Pack your bags. You're at the top of everyone's list when it comes to translations. Priority 1. What do they want? Where are they from? You'll be reporting to me, but you'll be working with him when you're in the show.
That's what they call in the UFO.
Who's being carted off in the medevac?
Not everyone is wired for what you're about to do.
So what do they look like?
You'll see soon enough.
Every 18 hours, a door opens up. That's where we go in.
idea that this happened.
What happens now?
They arrive.
They need to see me.
Dr. Banks? Are you insane?
Now that's a proper introduction.
More objects have landed around the world.
This is one of 12.
I'm never going to be able to speak their words.
Got 2 days. Figure something out.
I'm
Human.
It's their language. We need to make sure that they understand the difference between a weapon and a tool. Language is messy, and sometimes one can be both.
Are you dreaming in their language? It's possible they're prodding us to fight among ourselves.
This is just a way to force us to work together for once.
It's more complicated than that.
How is it more complicated?
Russia just executed one of their own to keep their secret.
Got 21 hours
Before they start global war.
So how do we clarify their intentions?
I go back in.
Well, does this feel worse?
I don't know where you want to start. Do you want to start this one off, Clay? I've talked for a long time with the introductions and everything. You said you loved it. I agree. I think that it's a really fantastic movie and well deserving of its nominations at the Academy Awards, I think. It's very good sci-fi, thinking person sci-fi. That would be the kind that would usually be rewarded with awards and everything. They gave it sound editing, but you'd hope for something else. Not that sound isn't important. Yeah, would you? I guess I'd start off by just saying it's not at all kind of what I expected it to be. And it really, honestly, is the DS9 Prophet aliens in a theatrical film with a sort of what it really highlighted to me was maybe the difference between what you can expect from a movie and what you can expect from a show that has 176 episodes in it with a concept, where a movie really lets you like distill down to what the core concept is saying in a way that once you start to stretch out the concept, it kind of loses that appeal. And I really like the pilot for DS9 because I like what they did with the prophets and how they said that like aliens that see time as circular and not as linear would have a different perception about how to go about things. And that's exactly what this movie is saying by the end of it.
Yeah, it's like the DS9 episode if they took out the Bajoran religion stuff, which is the stuff that I don't like. So.
Yeah, they replaced it with sort of a college 101 level linguistics class.
Yeah, I thought that I was really impressed by it. I think I guess you could call it a twist in the story. Yeah, I guess it's a twist. I would say it's a fairly seismic shift in the storytelling when you get to the end and see how she's actually perceiving time. I thought that was so well utilized because I thought that opening scene sequence with the daughter was just like destruction. Like it was I felt every moment of that and the heartbreak that she was going through. And it's one of those things that they do so frequently in movies as a way to just set up like the mindset of the character going forward and how they need to like triumph over and get back up on their feet. Blah, blah,
they're
blah,
at
blah.
their low point and they need this event of this movie to fully be realized as a person again.
Yeah, and I liked that they did that and just completely turned it on its head because I was thinking of Gravity a little bit. In that, Sandra Bullock's character in Gravity is, I think, in a similar situation where her daughter has died or something, and now she's in space and she's sad. And the whole thing is about, she's keeping the death of her daughter in mind as she's triumphing over space or whatever. And when she gets back to Earth, she's sort of reborn, etc. And I like that they took that trope because after that opening sequence, that's the imprint that you have on Amy Adams for the rest of the movies, that she's operating from a standpoint of grief.
Yeah. At least the first 70% of the movie. Yeah.
Yeah, which technically she still is, because that's the whole concept of the movie, is that this like time is a flat circle kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, she doesn't know it early, right? Because she does not have the visions of the girl until when she meets the aliens. Yeah.
Yeah, I would debate that. I don't know. I don't know if she's explicitly is or isn't getting the visions of having a daughter until later in the movie.
But isn't that the whole? My understanding is that once she starts learning the alien language, that's when the visions start, because she has that whole scene about how learning languages rewires your brain. So the weapon of the language that the aliens are giving her is what enables her to start having these visions.
I guess I didn't necessarily see it that way. I was seeing it as I don't know. I guess it's not really consequential to the story, because either way, by the end of the story, those are the visions she's having from the beginning anyway, because it's all part of one time stream.
Yep.
But I like that they took that, but it imprints this operating from a standpoint of grief, and it's almost like I've never been through something obviously like she goes through in this movie, so I can't say this as someone who's been there, but I almost feel like it is a more honest version of how to deal with those kinds of emotions, because at the end of the movie, she's got this whole new understanding of the way things are going and what is going to happen and what has happened. And instead of where usually you have the character almost putting that stuff behind them and forgetting it and moving on from it, in this one, she's embracing that it's going to happen and embracing that the moments that lead up to the awfulness are worth it, and not worth, and are better to have than to just completely avoid.
Right.
Which is a really, painful and cathartic expression of that idea. And it was, I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, I think that I guess we can get into that's kind of the meat of it, like the twist, not the twist, but the realization that she is getting visions of the future as opposed to the past, and how everybody reacts to that. I thought that maybe from maybe a good place, before I wanted to move into that on my thoughts, a good place is kind of the structure of the movie is really interesting to me, in terms of I really find it kind of enjoyable how what happens to the main characters here is not the focus of the aliens that have come, which I thought was really fascinating. Like, the aliens are not here to... The aliens are here to deliver their language. However, the reason that the aliens are doing this is a totally self-serving thing for themselves, because they need the humans' help in 3,000 years, they say. So for the humans to understand this, these aliens show up, and it's almost incidental that our main character goes on this journey that she has about it. And it's not the aliens don't show up with the intention of giving her these visions and therefore letting her as a person see what's about to happen. It's just happenstance of them communicating that she becomes this. And I thought that I really liked the use of, it was a neat use of aliens where they're just kind of the MacGuffin, I guess, for like the idea of it, and that they don't have a strong place in the story as like an active agent. They're not like, you never really meet them. You never talk about incredible things with them. You never really get a sense of what they do or anything. It's all very vague. And the emotional heft is shunted off of that story, and it's on its own little thing and has nothing to do with the aliens at all, really. And it has nothing to do with the alien intentions. And I thought that was kind of neat.
Yeah, there wasn't like Amy Adams isn't like the chosen one or anything like that. She's just the one that happens to crack the code and then earns the ability.
Yeah, it's weird because it's almost a side effect, but it is the main effect. You know, if that makes any sense. Like, it's not, that is the reason that the aliens are talking to them. However, the ramifications of what it means, you can almost say, like, because the aliens are so used to living and seeing time this way, they don't think it's a big deal to expose another creature to this kind of foresight, and how devastating it is for humans is in no way devastating for the aliens.
Yeah, and I also really liked how tolerant the aliens were, if that's the word to use, because after they actually get attacked, the aliens are just like, okay, calm down, guys.
You killed one of us, and then you hurt him real bad, but you need to knock it off and listen to what we're saying.
Everybody chill out for a second. Where in most other movies that would be the point where it's like, oh, now they're putting up their shields and they're arming their weapons, and now we're fighting against the clock before they retaliate or whatever.
But it's more clever. The aliens still need the humans. The aliens apparently need this to work out for some reason, because they're going to need humanity in 3,000 years, as they say. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was great. Everything about it. I thought the design of the aliens was awesome. Very Lovecrafty. Like that was that alien design felt very much taken from the Lovecraft's description of the elder gods or whatever. I forget, where they have those like starfish like hands on the end of the tentacles, and they're like these weird, bulbous sort of cephalopod things. I thought that was great.
I was surprised we saw as much as we did of them, actually, because I feel it's one of those things you could have gotten away with. The only thing we see of the aliens is the writing that they write on the glass in the smoke, and you never actually see them.
They communicate through coffee stains.
Right, yeah, squiddy coffee stain ink. And I'm surprised they showed them as much as they did. I would have, because I probably would have shown them less, I think, if I was in charge of the creative decision, because I don't think it's important to see what they look like. And I don't know if it's distracting, but it's just kind of like a unnecessary detail, I guess, that I wouldn't have wanted to have to deal with.
You know what I kind of liked about it, though? That scene where she gets taken up into the fog room. They went out of their way to give you like a really clear shot of the one she was talking to, specifically like the lower portion.
Yep.
And the way that it was designed, the way the shadows fell on that like trunk portion kind of looked like a face.
Yes. Yeah.
And I really liked that, because it was kind of like humanizing them just enough that you can see her make a stronger connection with them. Sort of, she's parting the fog a little bit to see that there is a level of connection that is not just malicious, or malevolent.
Yeah.
So yeah, I generally agree about that stuff, especially if they're not necessarily the point of the story. Why show them off more than you have to?
Right. If you're not fighting them, almost. If you're not doing hand-to-hand combat with them, and you need to see what they can do. Yeah.
But, I didn't think it didn't work. I didn't think it looked bad. Honestly, that's the biggest problem is when you show it too much, the zippers on the suit start to show.
Yeah.
Yep. And I didn't really feel that here, because I thought it was still their shape is so weird, and they were still obscured enough that I didn't think it overstayed its welcome. And also I think it benefited from not really hiding it for most of the movie.
No, they showed it right up front. So you can't be underwhelmed when they finally show up, because they show you right up front, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's where that stuff really falls apart, is when if you're hiding it for the whole movie and then you show it, you tend to go, huh, unless it's like really great. Whereas this, they give you, they give you just the tip at the beginning.
Yep.
And then you see the rest of it as it goes on. So I didn't think that it worked against it the way in did you ever see Cloverfield?
Yes. Yep.
I loved Cloverfield. I did not care for the monster. Like, when they finally gave you a good look at the monster, I was kind of like, sure, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of those things where they hide it and they obscure it for so long that when they finally do give it to you, it's like, well, all right.
Yeah. Same with Godzilla 2000. Same problem.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I did learn from many billboards and buses how big his different appendages were, though.
Yep. That's right. Biomarketing
campaign.
that incredible Puff Daddy Led Zeppelin mashup, which just really...
I'll tell you, I am embarrassed to admit this, but that song is what got me into Led Zeppelin, who are my favorite band. Yeah, I had not really listened to them before that, and then I heard that, and I was like, I like half of this song.
Yep.
And yeah, so, it's not all bad, I guess, when they do those things.
We have Puff Daddy to thank for some things in life here, I suppose. Arrival. I guess I'll go into the criticisms I have of this are, I don't know how nitpicky this kind of is. Did you feel that the science was weirdly stupid for people? I felt that the scientists were explaining incredibly basic things that I guess the audience of the movie kind of needs to know, but at the same time, I was a little bit surprised by how unsophisticated the problem was that they were having. when Forrest Whitaker comes in, he's like, explain to me how language works. It kind of felt like it's the movie explaining how complicated this can be, but at the same time, all these physicists and linguists who are working together with like highly trained military people, it felt like they were explaining quite a bit to me, and I thought it took me out of it a little bit by how like basic a lot of their understanding was.
Yeah, I don't know. I hadn't really thought about it. The language stuff I actually liked because it's not something that you ever see really explained in movies. And when you're basing your entire story around trying to crack a language code, I think it makes sense to lay out your course of operation in a plain way, because that's just not something that people really think about when if you're going into a movie, you're not really thinking about sentence structure, Yeah. So I can see I didn't mind that stuff. I honestly didn't really. The sciencey stuff I didn't really notice because honestly I didn't really feel like there was a lot of it. Like Jeremy Renner was there to be a scientist, but he didn't really do anything.
No, I don't even know why his physicist role is there at all. Actually, He doesn't seem to. He seems to be better at linguistics than he does at physics.
Yeah, yeah, he does more for the linguistics than he does. I mean, it's not like he's running physics experiments up in the ship there.
Yeah. Well, the science scene that sticks out to me, I was having a trouble remembering. There's a scene where they show up, and they're like, well, the aliens have to like vent all the oxygen into the thing, so the door only opens for this limited amount of time. It's like, why do they do that? And the guy's like, well, if we were to breathe their atmosphere, it might kill us. And everyone goes, oh, it felt like a very like it's such an obvious thing that I was surprised that they even focused on it really to that point. And
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I assume that they did that only because at the end, when she goes up and they start filling the thing up with that gas to put a little bit of tension to it. Because I agree, where it's like, yeah, you can assume that there's some sort of atmospheric discrepancy there. But
I was more impressed by when they go in, the gravity is all wonky. Like that was much more of a show and don't tell kind of interesting way to show how different the alien ships are. Like the very first thing you notice is that when you go in, things are literally like upside down. Yeah.
Also very Lovecrafty.
Yeah.
I'm curious if there's some sort of like high level scientific theory about what a alien spaceship would look like now. Because the ship in this was very similar to the ship in Prometheus, the that comes down and does the whatever way back in the prehistoric period. They're very like elongated, sort of like oddly concave, looks like sort of like a
contact lens type thing.
Yeah, pistachio shell or something.
Yep.
And I mean it's a great look and it feels very 2001, that big black obelisk kind of thing. But yeah, I wonder if there's some sort of new sci-fi or science theory that, if there were ships that traveled like this, it would be this sort of shape and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Did I guess we can just move into like the meat of the story is actually the most interesting thing to me about it. Like the sort of idea that they're playing with here about whether or not you would go through with your life knowing what was to come with it. And where I think the movie really succeeds is that I think that they show a lot of perspectives on it, and outside of the problem. So would this movie to you be implying the fact that history is not possible to, or if the future is impossible to change? Would you accept that as like a basic, like, I think that I don't know how far into the problems with it I want to go, but I wonder, the movie seems to be implying that the future is set and you cannot change it. And I wonder if that kind of undoes the theme a little bit.
I don't know. I don't necessarily think so. 'Cause I mean, if that were the case, then there's not really much tension around whether or not she's going to get the message and the phone number to send to the guy at the end.
Right.
So I don't know if it really makes a stance on whether or not you could actually change the future if you know it.
Well, if you, I guess I'd argue it must, because if you didn't, you would have so many visions that don't make sense whatsoever to you. You know what I mean?
True. Yeah.
So because if all possible futures were open to you, you would get a glimpse of a million different things all the time. And the aliens seem pretty set on this is going to happen. And this might actually be the wrong track for like breaking down the story, because I think that's the only problem with what I think is going on with it. But outside of that, I think that the choices that people make are really interesting, and I come away from it thinking that Amy Adams actually makes the wrong choice, but she only makes the wrong choice if she's allowed to make the wrong choice. And so maybe if the future is set, I can't say it's the wrong choice, and I feel more sympathy for her at that point.
Yeah, I think trying to break it down into that sort of timeline theory is not going to be productive, because I don't think that's what the story is necessarily about. I think it's more about the emotional journey of her character in that concept than it is the concept itself.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with what you're saying, where I think it allows her to make the wrong decision on purpose, and that kind of thing. This is a tough one. I think I think when you get into time travel movies, as we are going to apparently in the not too distant future, it's easier to pick them apart as far as the quote unquote realistic or the logical workings of the time travel idea, if there is a lot of talk and weight put onto that idea in the story. Where, for instance, like Back to the Future is not only about Marty McFly getting back to 1985, but it is very much about the mechanics of time and
right.
and how changing the timeline will affect things. And stuff like Terminator, yes. Looper, probably yes. Where you can kind of really pick it apart and be like, oh well, the paradox this and this doesn't really make sense, and well, if this, then this, then this. But I don't know if this is one of those movies, just because it's not there's no real discussion of the mechanic at all, other than the fact that it exists. So it's tough for me to really criticize it too much for the the idea of, well, if she can see all possible futures, then how come she's not getting a billion visions? Blah blah. Like it's just that's not the kind of story they're trying to tell.
What kind of radiation exposure are we walking into?
Nominal. These are just for safety.
So is there any physical contact with the, am I the only one having trouble saying aliens?
There's a wall, like a glass wall. You can't get to them.
So what do they look like?
You'll see soon enough. Hurry up.
But I think I'd agree with you. I think that my larger point would be, I think that what it's saying is that the future is unchangeable. And I think I actually prefer that as an outcome to them, where so because the future is unchangeable, it actually doesn't give Amy Adams a choice in what she does here. And she has to go through it. And the thing is that she can enjoy the moment in and of itself, because she knows this has to happen, and she can look past the fact of like knowing that the misery is going to be coming down the line. She can enjoy the present moments. I think if she has no agency or choice over how the direction of her future goes, I think she actually makes the wrong decision to go through and have the kid, because the kid, it's all well and good that she can accept that she can live in the moment, but she brought in someone who had no choice in whether or not they're going to die. And I think it's better that she has no choice, in that she sees the future as a set thing that she has to go through with. And that almost makes more sense to me about why she and Jeremy Renner fall in love at all, because I don't really get the sense that they build anything through this movie.
Right.
And I think it's kind of a neat way that the movie portrays things. However, I don't know if that amplifies the emotional feeling that I feel about how I feel through the movie she's making a choice, and I actually don't think she is, in terms of what the story is telling me.
I see. Sure.
Yeah.
No,
you don't think it matters, I guess.
No,
because does Amy Adams do the right thing at the end of this movie? Who is getting the benefit out of what she does? Just her, I would argue.
Well, the world, I guess. I mean, if you wanted to
about
really break
the baby.
yeah, I was going to say if you really wanted to break down. See, that's why I was watching it from the standpoint of it's all sort of a piece. So like what you're seeing at the beginning is already the visions of the future. In that way, it is not changeable. Because yeah, you'd think that the easy answer would be, okay, well, just don't have the baby. But since I think the structure of it is such that it is a story that is supposed to be from the standpoint, or the emotional arc of it is one dealing with this grief of the dead child, that it kind of all has to, it does all have to happen. So, I mean, you could say, yeah, she makes the wrong choice because, why don't just don't have the baby? But if you're looking at it as a whole of this is a story about dealing with this grief and what you choose to remember and what you choose the decisions you make about it going forward, it kind of all has to happen that way. And yes. I think we're probably saying the same thing, more or less.
Yeah.
As far as her agency goes, yeah, I mean, I guess you're right. At the end of the day, or at the end of the story, she is kind of making the decision for herself, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, even she doesn't tell Jeremy Renner about this.
Right.
The reason they get to the divorce is because she has these premonitions of the child dying, and he is like, that is a terrible thing that we've done here, where we brought a baby into this world who's not going to live past, it looks like, early teens.
Yeah.
And if I guess that it hits harder to me if they have no ability to change that kind of stuff, because at that point, the theme of the story is really like, you really just kind of have to roll with the punches. And over the course of your life, you're going to have this entire story that pans out. And even if you know the end of it, living in the moment as you approach that ending still can't undo the suffering. But I think that the interesting philosophical argument against it is that I think that they created more suffering if they have a choice in doing it. So I just kind of think it's an interesting point of view that the movie has, I guess would be the way to look at it. And how her knowing what's going to happen has all these negative impacts on other people who the only difference is that they can't see what's going to happen. They all go through the same experience, but she's hit this like Buddhist state of being okay with everything, and the people who aren't are not okay. And I guess that ties into, by the end of this, does everyone, because they learn the alien language, have the ability to do this? That's my understanding, because she's teaching the alien language by the end of the movie, and I don't know if humanity as a whole gains this ability because of learning that language. I don't know.
That's a good question. I was a little bit fuzzy on that too. Like, I wasn't sure if she was imbued with some specific understanding that not everybody gets. Like there's a difference between being able to read Spanish and being fluent in Spanish.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I would say that would be opening a can of problematic worms across the board there if everybody could do it.
Yeah, it's a very movie that is of the moment, and it doesn't want to spill outside of the moment that it's talking about, which is fine. Yeah. There's nothing really wrong with that, but it is like you'd like to see the sequel to Arrival where everyone has these abilities, and like the sex would break down. I'd imagine like the religious sex would break down along the lines of like Jeremy Renner's type characters who don't want to know the future and want everything to be kind of a mystery, and then people who are okay with knowing the future and try to find happiness in the individual moments of those things. Yeah. That's
why I think it's getting into the specifics of it in this case is not beneficial because I wouldn't call it a failing of the story or anything, because it's like, I think it's another version of the environment, the scope of the environment thing that I'm always talking about, where it's like keeping it inside your bubble so your story works, and not stepping outside and just answering or opening way too many doors.
Yeah.
I don't. Did you see Us?
No, I have not seen Us yet.
No. Okay. Well, I won't talk about that. Let's just say I had a similar problem with Us.
Okay.
That's all I'll say. I'm sure we'll talk about it eventually.
Yeah. Well, let's. Do you?
But so just to finish what I was thinking. Yeah, it's because it's one of those things where if you extrapolate it outwards, the thing that they're actually getting, let's say everybody does get this ability, then you start thinking about what that means and what it could mean. It's like, well, assuming that society doesn't turn on a dime and be able to deal with this, it's going to cause a shitload of problems, and B, if you think about what she can actually do now in a larger sense, outside of what happens in this movie, if everybody does that, doesn't that make life really pretty boring?
That's the
because I guess there's sort of like an idea of, I guess that's where the her state of being comes into mind, because I think in order to deal with what she can do, you have to kind of resign yourself to the fact that like it's just all happening and there is no real, I don't know if the surprise is the word, but there's no, do you know what I'm getting at?
I do. Well, I think that the people who meditate or do like the mindfulness meditation is like the basic idea is that a lot of stress of life comes from being concerned about what the next thing is. Like, think about while you're going during your day, you spend a lot of the time just sitting there going like, okay, when's the next bus coming? Or, okay, like when is this thing coming on? Or like, okay, I have to do this now. Or I got to do that in the future. And the thing about training the mind to avoid that kind of thing is that you stay focused on the present and like what's actually happening in front of you. And only then are you able to really enjoy those things because you're not distracted by the future. And I think that the argument here could be, even if I wonder if people would say that it wouldn't be too boring of a life to know your future, because that's the only way. You know exactly how long you're going to be sitting waiting for the doctor to see you. You know exactly how long you're going to be sitting there, and you can appreciate that moment instead of sitting there wondering when the doctor is going to show up.
True.
Does that make sense?
I guess it all depends on how you perceive that ability, right? Because I mean, ultimately, it's a concept that you can't really fathom. You can't really wrap your mind around it.
Yeah.
In any realistic way. But yeah, I think you're right. I think it's more like that, where it's not explicitly like having all possible avenues in front of you at once. So you have, all these future timelines that you're considering and like, well, if this is going to happen, this, then blah, 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 then I guess I won't even do this. It's not that kind of thing. I think it's more of an internalizing, and appreciating the time that you have as opposed to worrying about, what comes after it.
Closest analog might be rewatching a TV episode. You're watching it because you're purely enjoying it and you're not worried about where it's going to go or whatever. You're just in the moment of, I like this, I'm going to enjoy it right now.
Yeah. It's funny. Something I've been noticing as I've been working, because I spend most of my time at my drawing desk just, staring at a page. And so I listen to a lot of stuff and I watch a lot of TV in the background just to, keep things interesting. And I've noticed that there are certain elements or songs or parts of songs or even pages that will trigger very direct memories of the other thing, of the inverse. So basically, like, there are some TV shows that I've watched while working where if I watch an episode back and it comes to a very certain specific place, I immediately get a picture of what I was drawing at that time.
Yeah, I get that with food. Like when there are certain things that I like, books that I was reading while I was eating something, and whenever I look at that book, I think about the food that I was eating. Well,
interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a really fascinating mechanism, and it works the same way the other way too. Where if I'm looking at pages I've drawn, they'll be, I'll be just kind of looking at it, and then one panel will just pop, and I'll be like, ooh, I'll just get a very clear vision of whatever episode of TV I was watching or what part of the podcast I was in or something like that. And it's a very interesting shock of memory in a way that is not like, oh, I'm going to sit and remember the time that I did X or something. It's just a very specific flash. And that was the feeling I got of how this was sort of happening where it was she was getting not necessarily like because showing memory in a movie is tough, right? Because if you think about the way you actually remember things, I was thinking about this as I was watching it because I was like, how the fuck am I ever going to verbalize this? It's not like you're hitting play on a video. It's more like you are going to the folder on the computer and just sort of like thinking about all of the things that are in the folder. It's not like you're watching a series of events. It's like you are perceiving a folder of material all at once. And so it was interesting to see this idea of this vision thing where they are trying to go for this like hard hit, like quick shot thing, but they're also doing it in like a way that they're actually showing the future in a way that it's creating tension about the action in the past. So I really liked the way that they handled this stuff because it wasn't the usual thing where she like stops and goes, ugh, and then they do a hard cut to the future and she comes back and she's like, I just saw what happens 15 minutes from now in that amount of time.
Yeah, she's like a ghostly figure in the future watching people run around and try to figure stuff out.
Yeah, it was a lot more fluid, which I think goes with the way they were handling things. My only gripe, if you can call it a gripe, I guess. Did you think the thing with the phone number was a little too heavy-handed? With the Chinese phone number where he's like, thank you for calling me on my private line, which I know that you don't have.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give it to you now and tell you these secret words that you have to say. I don't know. I wish that had happened more organically and didn't just seem like, in like the result of Inception, sort of.
Right. Yeah. In the future, he tells her far too much information that she already knows. He's like, as you know, you called my number, blah, 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 and then said blah, 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 blah. And that's the only reason that she knows that she has to say that in the present.
And he's doing it the way he's saying it. He's doing it from the standpoint of giving her that information so she can do it in the past.
Yeah, but I think on a movie level, I don't think that character is intentionally doing it that way, is he?
I think he is.
Oh, you do?
I think so. Yeah, because the way that he does everything, why else would he type the phone number out and show it to her?
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
And then he very specifically tells her something that nobody else would know, and the way he delivers the line too. It's like, as you know, you called me on my private phone, which nobody has the number to.
But shouldn't they, if they're in the future, shouldn't they be more organically talking about it? Be like, hey, this is that moment where, because we both have seen the future, I need to give you this information right now, instead of talking about it in it already happened in the past sense. You know what I mean?
Well, that's why I mean that's what I mean by thinking that it was a little too on the nose. Like I wish it had come up in a more organic way. Like if they had talked. If they had talked about, the events of the day, and then it ended with him like handing her his card or so, just something that didn't seem like he was actively changing the future by changing the past by giving her the information in the future, that kind of thing.
I would have been totally fine by changing the past if he gives her the information, if they both acknowledge in the future that they're doing it because they know that they have to do it at that point. You know what I mean?
That's one way to do it. Yeah.
Because
I think the problem though is at that point in the movie,
it's still a mystery, kind of.
It's still like what exactly is happening is not known. That it's once you understand the language, you have this new understanding of time.
Well, it's the same with the way that what I think is clever about the movie is that they do the trick that you're saying, where because you see the opening scenes of the kid dying, you think that that's her past that it's built into instead of the future. However, when you as the audience member know those scenes about the kid that you've seen, but the character has not seen them to that point, her memory flashes are much more obvious to us than they are to her as a character. We have a level of omniscience over her story that she does not have at that point. So when you have to do the difficult thing of showing a flash of memory that to her is not really supposed to make any sense, I think she has a couple lines when it's happening of who is this child and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And as an audience member, maybe to be more, it wouldn't have been as thematically interesting or structurally interesting, but to be in that moment and be as confused as her would have been neat. But I think the movie does a better trick by showing you the kid first and then flipping it.
Yeah, I think so too. And I was wondering, did you get the feeling, the scene where the daughter is asking her, looking for the term zero sum equation or whatever it was, the compromise, but where everybody wins, whatever that back and forth was, and she doesn't know what the word is.
Yeah, right.
And then they cut back to the present, or past, and Jeremy Renner says it, and then they cut back to the vision, and she says it to the daughter.
Yeah, zero sum game, right?
Yeah, zero sum game. And it registers with her that there is information being added to the timeline or something. At that point, when you think that the visions are still of the past, my initial thought was she's gonna save her daughter, because this is she's learning information in the future, which is now being sent back to her in the past, which means she can change the timeline.
Oh,
by getting it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So because you still think that stuff is all in the past. So my first inclination was, she's gonna, whatever ability she's getting is allowing her to alter the timeline and change things that happened in the past. So she's gonna try and save her daughter. I guess maybe that's, I don't know, but
that's
that was
fascinating
my first.
Because I really enjoyed the movie. However, once they started talking about the time nature of the aliens, I knew what was happening with it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I didn't have a mystery. Once she started having visions, I was like, it's like, oh, it's the future. And like the aliens, the effect of the aliens is that they are able to have no concept of time. And she has not brought up her daughter at all, which, I can see the mystery staying a little bit longer. It's honestly, I had the DS9 aliens in my head, and I was like, oh, they know everything. So they're probably feeding her information. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I didn't.
I still think it works. Sorry.
Yeah, I think it clicked with me about where it clicks in the movie. I think it's funny when you get into these things, because I always wonder whether or not they're giving you too much or making it too obvious what's going on. And I'm on the fence with this one, because I thought there was a certain point where they could have really rolled off the throttle a little bit, because I was kind of hoping they weren't going to explicitly say that Jeremy Renner was her husband. Because I thought at that point it's like, okay, we get it. You're just really, really hammering it home. I think there was enough there and enough implication based on the way that she talked about her husband, and the fact that he's the only character in the vicinity to her.
Yeah, I like the little lines, like she says, "Ask your physicist father" or something. Like she doesn't say physicist, but she says, "Your father knows the science. I know the language." Yeah.
I thought it was pretty clear once you figure out that what she's seeing is the future. I thought it was pretty clear that Jeremy Renner was the husband.
Yes. Yeah.
So I kind of wish they pulled back on that a little bit, but at the same time,
you don't think his. I think his reaction to that stuff is so important that you need to know it's him, I think. Because if it was just a vague dude who left, it wouldn't be as upsetting as knowing that character, I think.
Yeah,
even though you don't really get to know either of these characters, and that's not a flaw of the movie, because it's not really important, I guess. It's more about like how they react to this situation, but I was glad he didn't at the very end get down on one knee. I was like, oh, thank God that didn't happen, because
hey,
I don't think it earned it.
I'm not completely off base saying this is actually not entirely dissimilar to Leap Year, because you've got these Amy Adams and this male character who are together for the whole movie and don't really show any romantic interest in each other, and then all of a sudden at the end you find out they're married.
Yeah.
So it's not entirely different. But yeah, I think that would have been bad, and I'm really glad she didn't kiss him at the end either.
Yes.
That it was just sort of like a hug or whatever.
Yeah, well, I like that she's treating it as this has to happen, sort of, and I almost wonder maybe the movie could have played his interest in her a little bit stronger, and her not interested until she sees the future, sort of, and then it's like, oh, this has to happen for some reason. I think that's adding a layer of theme that the movie doesn't really need, but it's something that I was thinking about, and maybe. I kind of like movies that leave you with like wondering about the open space that exists, much like the aliens have that open space in their number thing.
Yep.
But it leaves you wondering about that open space of like where the characters would exist in that area if you were to look at them and have a movie about that time.
Yeah, I'm glad that they didn't have him more interested in her, honestly, because I think it would have been too easy to figure out at that point. But again, I don't know. I guess it depends. But yeah, overall, I mean, it's very minimal nitpicks. I thought, as far as it's probably the most emotionally affecting time travel movie I've ever seen. Because generally time travel movies are fairly cold, where it's this idea of changing the timeline and these things you may or may not be able to do, and if they're wringing a lot of emotion out of it, generally it feels kind of forced, I think.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting because I guess I'm sort of narrowing down what I think about this. This is a time travel movie that insists you can't change the future.
Right.
Which is kind of neat. That's a very unique way to take it, because she has no mechanism of changing the future. It's more she just has memories of the future. And that's kind of she doesn't have a machine that allows her to fly back into the past and say, I'm sorry, Jeremy Renner, like, I'm sorry I did all this stuff. It's more being able to see the ramifications of your time travel, but not be able to change anything about why you caused those ramifications to happen. That's kind of a neat thing, a neat twist on the genre. Yeah,
I think it's more successful and more emotionally honest than... I've seen movies try to do this in the past where, like, the first one that pops to mind is the Guy Pearce remake of the H.G. Wells' The Time Machine.
Yeah.
Where his whole motivation for going back in time was to prevent the death of his wife. But he discovers every time he tries it, she ends up getting killed a different way. So with this idea that her death is a fixed point in time, that no matter what he does, it's still going to happen.
Right.
And it's that sort of, that movie, it's not a good movie, but it's like, there's that sort of aspect where it's like, you are actively trying to change the timeline and then realizing that you can't, versus what's happening here where it's like, she is choosing not to, and she is choosing to take it as it comes, instead of actively trying to rail against it.
Yeah. It's realizing your helplessness, I guess, in the face of time. Dr. Burnham should have showed up and started screaming about how time kills us all.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that. Like, I like the sentiment of that scene in Discovery. I don't think it works in the episode, but I think it's an interesting look at the concept that I haven't really seen before.
Yeah, it's the two. She has the Jeremy Renner outlook here, where knowing everything that you know is a downside to existence. Like, knowing the way... Knowing too much information is bad, and I think the movie does a good job of making Amy Adams's point that knowing something like that can be helpful to you and be kind of like liberating in a lot of ways. Yeah. I guess the ethical conundrum is really just whether or not bringing a kid into that situation is fair. And they kind of ignore it and skirt around it by just making it emotionally devastating, and you never really get to know the kid, and you understand the pain and the torment that she went through. And yeah, I think it's neat. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think that it was wrong that they did the kid thing. It's just kind of if you were to think about like the ethics of her situation, that's the one thing that sticks out to me.
Yeah. And I think that's where it comes into looking at the piece as a whole versus getting down to the specifics. Because I don't disagree. I think, if you want to get into it, the ethics of having that kid are very, very suspect. But as the piece as a whole is meant to be about, the grief of that loss and dealing with that, et cetera, et cetera, that aspect of it has to happen,
Well, what if I guess here's the question. What is the reason that she is not in a relationship with the father before the movie starts, and Jeremy Renner does not have that role? Do you know what I mean? Like, what if she is pregnant at the start of this movie, and the end of it is her knowing how this pregnancy will carry out and not telling the father about it? Mm-hmm. I guess what I'm saying is that is Renner thrown in as kind of an additional mystery to sort of create a little bit more of like, who could the father be, as opposed to focusing on the decision that she makes about it? I don't know if one way is the better or worse, but it ties into the mystery of the weirdness of their relationship, I think, hinders the main point about her seeing the future. I guess I'm kind of stumbling over what I mean here, but I don't know if you're picking up what I'm trying to say.
I don't think that him being the father is. I mean, it's part. I guess it's part of the mystery, but I don't think it's the point of the mystery.
Yeah.
Or really a mystery that is dying for an answer. Which is why I didn't think it was 100% necessary to come out and say that he was the father. Because I did notice that through the movie, I was like, they're not really talking about the father at all. Like, I just thought that was a choice before they tell you what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought that was a choice for what aspects of her relationship with her child that they were going to show you. Because I mean, in the timeline of the images that you're getting, it's not consequential to know who the dad is.
No,
like
you assume they divorced after the death of the kid, and they don't talk to each other. Yeah.
Well, no, they divorced before the death of the kid.
Oh, right. Yes. Yeah. Right.
Whereas, well, you learn that later on. At first, it always, yeah. They
You
always imply that.
You don't know that at the beginning when she's a teacher, right? When she's lecturing, you know that the baby died, or the kid died, and she's no longer with the father, it seems.
Yes.
But you don't know that you don't know the timeline of when the divorce came, because you don't know it's Jeremy Renner at that point.
No, knowing Jeremy Renner, it doesn't matter because you find that out like way early. Because in one of the flashbacks or flash forwards or whatever you want to call it, the daughter mentions.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Seeing the dad, and she's like, I'm sorry, that was my fault, blah, blah, blah,
That's right. Yeah, you're right.
So that, them being split up, I just thought, okay, well, the dad's not in the picture, so he's not in the movie. So I don't think that was a mystery that was screaming to be answered. And knowing that he's the dad doesn't really, I mean, it adds something to it, but I think it's kind of negligible. Which is why I don't think it's necessary to hammer home that it's him.
Yeah, well, I guess his character is pointless unless he is the father.
True.
Yes. Like kind of retroactively, I wonder if looking at this movie, if you're going like, why is Jeremy Renner even here? Like, what is he? Yeah. What is he doing for this story? And then you go, oh, it's the dad. He goes, oh, it all kind of makes sense. He's like the lamest version of what is John Connor's father's name?
Kyle Reese.
He's like the lamest, most like uninitiated Kyle Reese that we've ever had in the Terminator movie. Yeah. And he's kind of there by accident, but I wonder now if I had known, it's always impossible to say knowing what you know now, but like it does become more obvious why he exists in the movie to become the father at the end when he doesn't have a reason to be there in the start. And I think maybe it might be a flaw of the movie that he doesn't seem to have a good reason to be there for a lot of it.
I just assumed he was the actor they got for that part.
Sure.
Because, like if they've made hundreds and hundreds of movies where if you just gender flip those, you wouldn't be asking that question. Like it's just, oh, yeah, this is the woman they got to play the other scientist.
It's just there's a lack of physics. He just has no physics problems.
No, he's just there. Yeah. He doesn't really have anything to do except, look at computers and apparently linguistic stuff. Did you ever see Sicario?
No, I haven't.
The thing that was fascinating about Sicario, it's a good movie.
It's Villeneuve, right?
Yeah, same guy. Yeah. The thing that's really interesting about Sicario to me is that, much like Jeremy Renner in this movie, Emily Blunt, who is the main character of Sicario, has absolutely no bearing on the story whatsoever. You see everything through her, but she has zero bearing on anything. If you took her out of the story, the same thing would happen, regardless of whether she was there.
Right.
Which I feel like is fairly rare, or maybe it's not. Maybe it's happens more often than I think, but it really stood out to me. I know that the famous one people talk about is if you took Indiana Jones out of Raiders of the Lost Ark, nothing would change.
Yeah, well, I heard I haven't seen Raiders in a long time. I was listening to a screenwriting podcast that there's apparently some criticism. It was about plot holes. You would probably like that episode, but there's some information in Raiders. If he just stops looking for something, the story stops. Like the Nazis are only after him because he's pursuing it or something. I'm not familiar with it. You might know better than I am, but it's that kind of an interesting conundrum, I guess, on how you drive your plot forward.
Yeah, I mean, he's technically if not, I mean, this is probably a conversation for a different episode, but if I remember correctly, he is the one who finds the Ark. So if he had just stopped looking for it, they wouldn't have found it because they didn't have the second half.
Right. That's
like,
it. Yes.
The staff thing. So yeah, I guess he does affect the plot in that he does actively find the Ark for the Nazis.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I thought that was, it ties into the uselessness of the character thing. It's just kind of like a tag-along character. There probably are a lot of tag-along characters who don't amount to much, but it's usually a sign of bad writing if your character has no purpose to be there.
Yeah.
The most obvious example, there's always the tag-along character who explains stuff for the audience. Like he knows these things and he just kind of tells everybody about it.
Yeah.
Are we? Yeah. I guess we're done. We're going to take a break, play a clip. We'll come back and give our final thoughts and wrap this one up.
So, Hannah, this is where your story begins. The day they departed.
You all right?
Despite knowing the journey and where it leads, I embrace it. And I welcome every moment of it.
All right, Arrival. We've seen the best and the worst of Amy Adams, and I guess the way to start this off is to say if you want to support the show at patreon.com/the Pensky File, it's much appreciated. A couple dollars a month, you get extra stuff. You also get a shout out, like these are Captain Tier supporters: Andrew Cherlog, Ben Douglas, Bradley Killens, Captain Quark, David K, Decker Sebastiani, Dwayne Hackett, Eric Johnson, Yarpy, Joint Mango, Kyle Barrett, Matt Flores, Matthew Cutler, Matthew Ross, Michael Pond, Mike Burnett, Nathan Elliott, Nick Sergi, Robert Cummins, Russ Graham, Samuel Custer, Grim Santo, Sean Spinobi, Stephen Cobb, Tarek Latif, and Will Yates. Thank you very much, guys, for supporting the show. Interesting couple movies for Amy Adams, I think, Clay. Yeah. Hers, I think neither really does her a good... You don't get a good sense of who she is as an actress through either one of them, which is kind of...
Yeah, I was just thinking about what to do for a B-roll for her. I'm going to have to look at the list. My first instinct is like American Hustle or something like that. Yeah, we'll have to think about it.
I haven't looked. I don't know anything besides I know she's the Muppet movie. Maybe the Muppet movie. Yeah. But yeah, it's too... Arrival is not built around her as a performer, really. And that's not a slight against her. It's just, it's not that kind of movie. And Leap Year was just her doing comedy that was terrible. So you don't get a good sense of anything.
Arrival's not built around her as a performer. And Leap Year is hoping that she can
be a good enough performer. Yeah, be a good enough performer to save it. And it just doesn't work out for her. I like...
And I think, I think that's not to say that her performance in this movie is not notable, because I think she's great.
Yeah, I think she's good too.
But yeah, it's not.
Everyone is very subdued. Like every character is subdued in this movie.
But I recently discovered the greatest invention or mechanism that was created and put into the streamability era that we're in, which is there is a function where you can turn on closed captioning or subtitles for when you rewind. And it came in really handy in this movie because I couldn't understand a damn thing Forrest Whitaker was saying. So basically, if you go into whatever where your subtitles are,
it'll Netflix, say you're talking about the app in Netflix, or are you talking about something else?
I did it in one thing and it applied it across the board. So everything that I use now does it. So if you go to subtitles, it'll say on, off, or on with replay. And so if you hit the 15-second back button, when it jumps back, it will give you subtitles up until the point where your jump back starts.
So just the 15 seconds that you jump back, and then it takes them off for you.
Yep. It's fantastic.
Yeah, this was I mentioned before, I use headphones for listening to the TV because the kids are sleeping, and it's kind of a noisy street outside, and we use headphones. This was a movie that you really get the sound mix in you, and I can see the low talking. Like the quietness with her talking being kind of problematic, and I didn't need the subtitles, but it's another way to go. But the subtitle thing is pretty interesting. That's actually a useful tool to have. It makes sense.
Yeah, it works on live TV too, which is amazing.
Neat.
Yeah. So you can see how they also screw it up. I have to say this, I am really disappointed that I didn't see this in the theater.
I am too. It made money. Let me see how much it made. It made money. It made a good amount. So I remember the feedback being that this movie did not do as well as they thought it would, and that they were concerned about the state of intellectual sci-fi in the theaters with it.
They apparently aren't too concerned because they keep giving Denny Villeneuve. How do they pronounce his last name? Villeneuve. They keep giving him gigantic budget sci-fi movies that are gonna make no money, but are gonna be amazing. Like, I don't know if you saw Blade Runner, but somehow he managed to make an amazing Blade Runner sequel that, as far as I know, bombed because I don't think anybody saw it, but it's really good. And then he following up that by doing fucking Dune, which is, talk about him. If you couldn't get people to come see Blade Runner, I don't think you're going to get people to come see Dune. Even though the cast is amazing, I think it's going to be a tough sell.
Yeah. I think, he certainly likes to live for a challenge, I guess, would be the way. This is actually a fairly straight ahead movie to make in terms of sci-fi.
It is,
It made $200 million. It cost $47 million. So it made money.
He's a guy that, I'd like to go back and watch his other movie. I think I've seen most of them at this point. I haven't seen Prisoners, and I think he's got another one that I haven't seen, and I'd like to watch them because he's really good. I mean,
Prisoners, Enemy, Sicario, Arrival, Blade Runner, Dune. And then he's got French films before that. He's got Maelstrom, Polytechnique, and Incendies.
Yeah, I haven't seen Prisoners. I heard good stuff about that. An Enemy? I don't know that one.
Enemy is Jake Gyllenhaal. He is Gyllenhaal in the dual role as two men who are physically identical but different in personality.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. It's Canadian,
shot.
Spanish psychological thriller. I have to check it out and see if it's any good.
The burgeoning Canadian Spanish genre.
You got to get that international funding wherever you can get it.
Yeah. But he's really good, and I'm officially looking forward to anything he puts out in the way that I tend to think about people like Tarantino or Christopher Nolan or people who do high concept stuff really well. He's officially on that list for me.
Yep. So thanks for joining us for our coverage of Amy Adams. Amy Adams. We've been, I guess that's probably the problem with these movies that we picked for her. Although Amy Adams has been nominated a lot for Academy Awards.
Mm-hmm. Has she never won?
She's never won. People think she's kind of in that Glenn Close category. But I don't have a problem with her being nominated, but I'm not shocked that she's never won. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She's fine.
I'm a little surprised that she didn't win for either American Hustle or like The Fighter or one of the she plays the girlfriend in The Fighter, which is just such a traditionally meaty role, and she's good in it. I mean, the problem with that is those roles tend to be all the same in those movies.
Yes.
So I'm surprised that one didn't win because that was getting a lot of heat that year, and American Hustle had a lot of heat behind it. She might have gotten overshadowed by Jennifer Lawrence in that movie a little bit, but I think she's a really great actress. I think she one of the great things about her is she adapts to the movie, and I don't really feel like she stands out as like a movie star because she looks very different. I mean, she still looks like Amy Adams, but she looks different enough where it's not like watching a Tom Cruise movie where it's like I just said, you're watching a Tom Cruise movie where it's Tom Cruise pretends to do this for 2 hours.
Yeah. I mean, I would say Amy Adams is not a movie star, in the Tom Cruise sense of what a movie star is, but even so, there are actors who, if they're playing a role, it can be tough to get past them. It's like, that's that person doing their thing in that role. Yeah.
I think she is more of a chameleon in that whatever you give her, she adapts to it and does it well.
Yeah. She's. I guess my more cynical take of that would be she's very grounded and she's not flashy enough to like she fits in the girlfriend of the fighter role. You know, like you can put her into those roles and it's never going to be a bad job, but you're never going to. I just can't. I have a hard time picturing a transcendent Amy Adams performance, I guess. Would be the way. And there's nothing wrong with her. I don't know if she doesn't have that like Glenn Close or who's the older female who wins all the awards?
Meryl Streep.
Yeah, like those characters, like when you watch Devil Wears Prada, it's like, oh, Meryl Streep is like being someone totally different here, and you can see where the skill comes from. Amy Adams is always reliable, but it's always kind of down that middle lane. That nothing too crazy about it.
That's fair. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that.
Anyway, we're done. Thank you very much. We're going to pick our B-roll. We don't know what it is. We'll have to look over the list. Let us know if you have any suggestions for it. Otherwise, support the show on patreon.com/The Pensky File if you are so inclined. It's much appreciated. All the social media links are down below. And that's about it. Clay, do you have anything you want to say before we sign off with Arrival?
Night Moves #4 is in comic book stores now. So check it out.
Check them out. Thank you very much, guys, for listening. And we'll be back with whatever the B-roll is. Thank you for listening to our coverage of Arrival, and we'll see you next time.